I was 8 years old when I was walking with my parents by one of our local movie theaters, and a poster hung in the outside wall case promoting a new movie that would come out that fall. I had no idea about the franchise until a few weeks later when my dad watched a movie on cable, Predator. At first, I was intrigued, but my overactive imagination got the better of me when he explained it was about an alien hunting a bunch of soldiers in the jungle. My first thought was springing to aliens, which I mentioned being terrified of in the last video. But morbid curiosity kept getting the better of me, and my dad encouraged me to watch as the predator unmasked itself. He told me it was going to look like kind of a dog. I don't know why parents lie to kids about stuff like this because I've never seen a dog with crab-like mandibles flexing on its face. Again, another movie monster terrified me until I learned my grandmother loved the Predator, or at least the version of the film heavily edited for TV by our local Fox affiliate. Eventually, my fear morphed into fascination, and from fascination into respect for the character and a love for a franchise. So this month, for Finding Fiction, we're breaking down the Predator series, discussing the films, books, and other media formats it's invaded. The Predator is one of the most iconic movie monsters of the 20th and 21st centuries. If you've never heard of it, or you've been living under a rock for the better part of 40 years, it's crucial to understand the creature's capacity and function. Standing at roughly 8 feet tall, the Predators, or Yautja as the expanded lore calls them, are extraterrestrial big game hunters who come to Earth searching for the most dangerous trophies. They are bigger, faster, and stronger than humans, and they use some of the most advanced tech in the galaxy to aid their hunts. They show up in variation across 7 core films, 2 movie crossovers with the Alien franchise, several books, comics, graphic novels, and video games. They have mostly been portrayed as villains, but they've also been depicted as noble anti-heroes too, in a few variations. So let's start with as mentioned, the Predator character has been featured in a total of 9 film properties. Predator, the first movie in the franchise, was released in 1987. It was followed up 3 years later in 1990 with Predator 2. A 14-year gap followed until we got Alien vs. Predator in 2004, which was a long-awaited crossover, which itself was followed up with 2007's AVP Requiem. Then 3 years after that, in 2010, we got Predators, which played off the pitch James Cameron gave to 20th Century Fox for his sequel to 1979's Alien. Then nothing, until 2018, when we received the confusingly titled The Predator, which was helmed and co-written by Shane Black, who had been one of the actors in the original film. And then there was a sense that the franchise had been killed. However, the franchise was resurrected to a degree by 10 Cloverfield Lane director Dan Trachtenberg, who gave us 3 core franchise films back-to-back, starting with Prey in 2022, and both Killer of Killers and Predator Badlands just this year. For the sake of the breakdowns, I'm going to ignore the AVP crossovers to focus on the core films. If you'd like me to tackle those in another video, please leave something down below in the comments. The original film from 1987 was an unexpected blockbuster boasting a who's who of well-known former bodybuilders and professional wrestlers turned action stars, including its primary star, Arnold Schwarzenegger. The film sees a team of special ops soldiers going into a Central American jungle in search of a captured American dignitary. Unfortunately, it turns out the team was co-opted by the CIA, who needed a cover to go in and gather intel on a country where they shouldn't be operating.
We got him. I think this is what you're looking for.
You said us out! It's all bullshit. All of it. The cabinet minister, the whole business. Got us in here to do your dirty work.
Look, we just stopped a major invasion, and 3 days they'd have been across the border with this stuff.
Why us?
Because nobody else could have pulled it off.
The titular big game hunter shows up and begins busting heads. Literally. After watching the team take out a group of guerrillas, it begins picking them off one by one until only Arnold is left for a final confrontation, which ends with the Predator activating a self-destruct device on its wrist to avoid being captured and having its technology used against it. Despite being released in 1990, the second film depicts a future version of Los Angeles in the year 1997, which is overrun with drugs and gangs and in the midst of a huge war between 2 major factions. the Jamaican Voodoo Posse, and the Colombians. Danny Glover of Lethal Weapon plays LAPD Lieutenant Mike Harrigan, whose squad begins investigating a new predator's hunting and killing of the gang members, which eventually gets Harrigan's team targeted and him in the crosshairs of both the alien hunter and a government operative named Keyes, played by Gary Busey. This time, we see what happens when a human actively kills a predator in one-on-one combat. 2010's Predators changes things up and starts in media res with Adrian Brody's Royce in free fall above a jungle. He's saved when a parachute automatically deploys. He quickly encounters a member of the Mexican drug cartel, a Russian special forces operative, a death row inmate, a member of a Senegalese death squad, an IDF sniper named Isabel, and scrawny doctor played by Topher Grace. They quickly discover they are on a jungle planet game preserve, dropped there by the tidal aliens. This time there are technically four predators. There's a classic predator that looks very similar to the jungle hunter from the original film, strung up on a totem inside a hunting camp, and the other three are labeled as super or bad blood predators. Personally, I lean more towards the bad blood description because they do violate many of the honor codes of their species, which includes hunting their own kind. Like the soldiers from the original film, each of these capable killers gets picked off one by one until only three remain: Royce, Isabel, and Edwin the doctor. As it turns out, Edwin wasn't an odd man out or fish out of water. He was a serial killer who finally found a place where he belonged. Eventually, it ends up with Royce and Isabel being the only survivors, but we're left wondering how they were going to get off the planet. The Predator from 2018. God, I really had to cover this one, didn't I? This one felt like it had so much promise, only to be a huge letdown. Directed and co-written by Shane Black, who played Hawkins in the original movie, it kicks off with one Predator ship trying to destroy another ship. The one doing the running gets hit hard enough to crash land on Earth. This crash Predator is not here to hunt humanity. He's here to provide us with a weapon to fight other predators. Why? Nobody knows, and it's never really explained. Some of the human characters make quasi-educated guesses, but to be honest, there really isn't a whole lot of intelligence going on in this one. Instead of proving that he's here to help us, the crashed predator starts off by killing two of the first three humans he sees, and not killing Quinn McKenna, who is the main protagonist, because of plot armor. McKenna takes the predator's helmet and wrist gauntlet, which includes its cloaking device, and ships them from Mexico to his estranged wife's house, where it gets intercepted by his middle school-age autistic son, Rory. McKenna is eventually picked up by the government organization that's investigating the crashed ship, and even though he never actually says anything to anybody in any kind of interrogation other than some sarcastic comments, they put him on a bus with a bunch of other former soldiers who have actually got mental health issues, and the plan is to send him to some kind of asylum. Why? We don't know, because nothing's ever actually explained in any kind of logical way. The script said McKenna needed to meet these guys so he could have a team that could get picked off one by a predator. An actual super predator shows up hunting the first one and then begins picking off all the humans. Eventually, it's assumed the super predator wants to capture Rory because apparently autism is the next stage of human evolution or something. But McKenna kills the predator, rescues his son, and takes the weapon, the first normal predator brought to Earth, back to the government where he oversees the research. Hats off to Jacob Tremblay for his kind of accurate portrayal as Rory, but as a parent with an autistic kid, I found the plot point involving Rory's diagnosis as a kind of fundamental misunderstanding of autism on the screenwriter's part, and it was incredibly offensive. 2022 brought Dan Trachtenberg's first entry into the series with Prey, which takes place in the 18th century North American Great Plains and follows a young Comanche woman, Naru, who wants to be a hunter in her tribe and ends up matching wits with a new breed of predator whom she studies and outsmarts. That's pretty much it. It's the least complex story in the bunch. Trachtenberg's next outing with the IP was this summer's Killer of Killers, a completely animated series of vignettes across 3 different time periods in Earth's history. Part 1, The Shield, is the earliest chronologically taking place in the mid-19th century AD, with a fight between a brute predator and Viking leader Ursa. Part 2, The Sword, jumps us to the early 1600s in feudal Japan, with a 95% dialogue-free adventure pitting the Oni predator against twins Kenji and Kiyoshi, who are a ninja and samurai respectively. The third part, The Bullet, jumps us into 1942 and introduces us to would-be World War II fighter pilot Torres, who faces off against a Predator attack ship in the skies over the Atlantic near Casablanca. The vignettes culminate in a fourth part that sees the three warriors pulled out of cryostasis to fight in an arena on Yautja Prime, or they will have their heads detonated by the control collars around their necks. While Kenji and Torres do get away, Ursa sacrifices herself to help them. She doesn't die, getting warehoused in a cryotube alongside Dutch from Predator, Harrigan from Predator 2, and Naru from Prey. The most recent film, Predator Badlands, released just last month, and is the first theatrical release for the franchise for 7 years. It flips the script and places a Yautja named Dek as the main protagonist / anti-hero. He partners up with a Weyland-Yutani synthetic named Thea, played by Elle Fanning, who also plays a dual role as Thea's synthetic twin, Tessa. This is the first of the core films to go for a PG-13 rating, which still allows for plenty of violence against a bunch of creatures and synthetics without a single drop of human blood being spilt. But because of certain elements in this mostly enjoyable found family coming-of-age story, it feels a little too family-friendly and watered down due to Disney now owning the IP, which, let's be clear, The Predator is anything but family-friendly, unless your family is the Mansons. If I was to rate the films from best to worst, this would be my personal ranking. Predator, Prey, Killer of Killers, Predator 2, a tie between Badlands and Predators for the 5th spot, and then finally The Predator coming in at the scrapings of the bottom of the barrel. Between Dark Horse Comics and Bantam and Del Rey Books, there were a series of comics and novels featuring the Predator. Because of the sight gag featuring the xenomorph skull on the trophy wall in Predator 2, Dark Horse began publishing crossover issues featuring the core AVP storyline, which they could easily pull off because they also carried the publishing rights for the Aliens franchise too. There were 3 main volumes to the story arc: Prey, War, and Hunter's Planet. Most of these were published as comics and collected into graphic novels, and then later published as full-length novels during the 90s. And the novels fleshed out more of the world building established in the comics. It was in these 3 books that the term Yautja was coined. There are going to be 5 titles that I'll be covering, plus 2 graphic novel crossovers that I'll be tackling in this section. And I'll mostly be going in order of publication. The first on my list is Batman vs. Predator, which was released in 1993. This is an iconic matchup that sees a Predator land in Gotham and begin his hunt by going after the winner of a championship boxing match, taking the fighter's hands and skull as trophies. This escalates as one of the crime lords sponsoring the fight gets taken out, and clues lead Batman to the scrapyard where the Predator is hiding, nearly dying in the process. The Predator takes more trophies from the other crime boss, the losing fighter, and Gotham's mayor. Batman returns and uses a new armored exoskeleton suit to augment his skills against the Predator, which leads to the outskirts of Wayne Manor. Batman wins, and the Predator kills himself with a sword, which is then presented by the Hunters clan to Batman as a trophy. This graphic novel spawned 2 more sequels. In 1995, we got a novelization of one of the comics arcs entitled Concrete Jungle, which focuses on a Predator showing up in New York City during a heat wave and deliberately going after John Schaefer, a police detective and the younger brother of Major Dutch Schaefer, Schwarzenegger's character from the first film. This book's title is shared with a 2005 video game in which the player actually plays as the Predator in a cyberpunk version of Gangland Chicago. In 1999, we get the first original novel, Big Game, which sees U.S. Army Corporal Enoch Nakai rediscovering his Navajo roots as he fights with a Predator in the New Mexico desert, with the final fight taking place in an astonishing action set piece placed in the vitrified glass of an extinct lava field. Given how the original film's premise was going to focus on a Native American main character before Schwarzenegger came on board and suggested the Spec Ops team, this story feels like the story that bridges nicely between the original film and Prey from 2022. In 2017, we got the first of 2 anthologies called If It Bleeds, taken from Arnold's line in the first film.
If it bleeds, we can kill it.
Which got repeated in Prey.
If it bleeds, we can kill it.
The vignettes jump from 12th century Japan to 9th century Viking Norway, World War I, the Civil War, which actually is based on the death of a real historical figure, Then we get Hurricane Katrina, and includes a story bringing back Mike Harrigan and Agent Carver from Predator 2. The second anthology, Eyes of the Demon, was released in 2022, and this title is taken from the line spoken by King Willie, the Jamaican drug lord in Predator 2. The types of predators we see in this anthology are more varied, including female huntresses showing up, and one story, The Monster by Michael Kogi, featuring a bunch of squatchers looking for Bigfoot in the Pacific Northwest, encountering a Yautja hunting the aforementioned Sasquatch. The last novel I'm mentioning is Predator Stalking Shadows, which released in 2020 as a prequel to the video game Predator Hunting Grounds, which sees the return of Dutch, Alice Braga as Isabel from Predators, and features Jake Busey as Sean Keyes, the character he played in 2018's The Predator. The novel bridges some elements initiated in Predator 2 and sets the stage for the video game's playability, which focuses on asymmetrical multiplayer combat between a lone predator and a squad of 4 commandos. The last crossover graphic novel was the recent Marvel publication pitting Wolverine against the Predator, which was inevitable since Wolverine is one of Marvel's most popular and violent characters, and Disney owns Marvel 20th Century Studios and the rights to both characters. It was an interesting story that depicts the Predator's single-mindedness in acquiring Logan's adamantium-laced skeleton as a trophy without understanding the mutant's regenerative capabilities. If you want to see what that would look like for free and in live action, check out Bat and the Sun's superpowered beatdown between the two characters. While there have been other novelizations of the movies and original titles in the franchise, these are the ones that stood out to me because of the consistency in As an author myself, I've always been a proponent of continuity in storytelling. I believe it's important because it provides consistency across the board, especially in long-running franchises that fans love. Star Trek is a great example. While most casual fans probably enjoyed the beginning of what's called the Kelvin timeline, which kicked off with J.J. Abrams' 2009 reboot film, many diehard purists haven't taken to it, seeing it as too action-oriented and not as scientifically grounded. It's also led towards series that felt very out of character for core Trek, with plots, characters, and dialogue aimed at meeting the standards of Gen Z speak and modern-day identity politics. But canon is supposed to be beyond all those external influences. While you may have different creators jumping into that sandbox to play around, what helps is when those creators pay attention to what has previously been established and they root their stories and characters in what came before without departing too heavily. For the most part, the Predator franchise has been more or less consistent in its characterization of its title species, but there have been some outliers and some decisions that have felt off-kilter, to say the least. My first complaint focuses on the 2006 book Forever Midnight by John Shirley. Shirley is an experienced author, but his depiction of the Predators in this book takes a very weird departure. It starts in 1804 with the Predators kidnapping the crew of an East India Company trading vessel and taking them off-world as slaves and to be hunted before jumping ahead 300 years to do the same with some spacefaring troopers, which partially paved the way for the plot of 2010's Predators, I guess. It also avoided the Yautja concept introduced by Steve Perry in Aliens vs. Predator Prey and used in many subsequent titles. Shirley refers to them as the Hish-Kuten, with a capacity to randomly change sex from male to female depending on hormone cycles, which actually ignores previous parts of the canon featuring specific sexual dimorphism. While the Hish have been eventually worked into the canon as ancient ancestors to current and modern Yautja, a lot of what happens in this book feels like it was written by somebody who was a casual fan tasked with writing fan fiction without really understanding the lore. Then, of course, you've heard my rant regarding the 2018 film. The less said about that, the better. But what's interesting is what's being said about the recently released Predator Badlands. While I agree the story does feel a bit watered down for younger and family-friendly audiences, I didn't see this as a massive departure from established lore. I don't think it does anything to damage the mystique of the Predators as a race of alien big game hunters either. Several of the books and comics depict story elements from the Predator's perspective, fleshing out their culture, their beliefs, and philosophies. We see this in Forever Midnight. We see this in Alien vs. Predator Prey. We see this to some extent in Alien vs. Predator War, among others. Given the fact the Predators live in a clan-based matriarchal society, that gives leeway for variation in the storytelling. And while I really wouldn't want to interpret any Predator as an anti-hero, exploring the culture just makes them seem more awesome. The conflicting explanations regarding the xenomorph and their origins between the various films was an unnecessary leap for Ridley Scott, who I feel has become a little bit too controlling, especially with the amount of control he had over Prometheus and then later with Alien Covenant, even though there's a lot of studio backlash for that one to really tie it back into the alien mythos. But the exploration of Deck in Predator Badlands as a character is far from a departure from the actual lore of the Predator franchise and its established canon. Overall, the Predator franchise has remained more or less strong. And just like with any story of warriors and hunters, you're going to have entries that are weaker than others, and vice versa. While I'm sure there will be those who disagree with my take on this topic, I think the series has been relatively strong, despite a few entries already discussed in this video. We're looking at you, 2018's The Predator, and your stupidly confusing title, and your idiotic writing and direction. Sorry. I do think the franchise is, so far, in good hands under Dan Trachtenberg's direction. I will say I'm cautiously optimistic, and I hope at some point we can get another entry that returns to the familiar formula, as well as the hard R rating. But with the character under the Disney banner, I expect that may be a while, but who knows? So this is where I leave you. Thank you for watching. If you liked this video, please make sure to like, subscribe, and click the bell for notifications on new content. If you'd like to support this channel, you can become a regular subscriber on Patreon for as little as $1 per month. You can also do a one-time donation through Cash App, or you can pick up merch on my shop on Teespring. All of those links can be found in the video description. If you have an idea for a topic, go ahead and leave your suggestion down in the comments section, and I'd love to know what you think about my assessment of the Predator franchise. Until next month, I'll find you guys in the fiction.